There are people in the galaxy you don't cross. Kale Voss was one of them. He hadn't been seen in nearly a decade. Not since the fires of Harkonnen Drift. Not since the War of Collapse. He disappeared after the treaties were signed, after the killing stopped. Some said he died in exile. Others claimed he was locked away on a penal moon. But the truth was simpler. Kale Voss walked away from it all. And now, someone had taken his daughter. Lyra Voss was not a soldier. She worked at a civilian research station on Seraph 9, one of the outer colonies known more for star maps than for trouble. She was a xenolinguist, brilliant, patient, and stubborn. Her life was quiet, her work uneventful, until she vanished without a sound. No alarms, no damage, no trace of forced entry. One moment she was sleeping in her bunk. The next, she was gone. Surveillance feeds glitched at the exact same moment. Power didn't drop. Nothing exploded. It was cleaner than any abduction the Peace Council had ever seen. All that remained was a mark. A perfect ring, seared into the landing pad beside her research lab. Circular, organic, unfamiliar. Within an hour, the station went on lockdown. Within 6, the council knew who she was. And within 12, someone made the worst decision in the history of peace. They went to find Kale Voss. He lived alone, deep in the dunes of Mars' third quadrant. No neighbors. No communications. Just an old shack and a dry well. A Peace Council envoy landed with caution, flanked by drones, and called out his name. He didn't respond. But the door opened. Inside, Kale Voss sat at a rusted table, staring at a holoframe. A looping image flickered softly. Lyra, age 10, laughing with a dog long since dead. The frame was cracked. The glass, worn from fingerprints. The envoy stepped forward. "Commander Voss," they said, careful not to use his other name. He didn't look up. "Your daughter is missing." He looked up. No one ever forgot Kale Voss's eyes. Steel gray. Cold. Quiet. The kind of eyes that never flinched, even when cities burned. "What do you mean missing?" he asked. They told him everything. The station. The mark. The glitch. The silence. He said nothing. Just stood, walked to a locked crate in the corner, and opened it. Armor. Black. Heavy. Outdated by modern standards, but still feared. He didn't speak for a long time. And when he did, it was just one sentence. "Get my ship ready." The night glass hadn't flown in years. It had no registration. No beacon. It wasn't supposed to exist anymore. But 2 days later, it rose from the Martian surface like a ghost breaking free from its grave. The Peace Council asked him to wait. They begged him to coordinate. They pleaded for protocol. He didn't answer. Instead, a message was sent across every channel, translated into all major dialects, echoed from pirate dens to border patrols. To the ones who took Lyra Voss, it said, "You have made your move. Now it's my turn." The night glass drifted into deep space, silent and unregistered. Its hull bore scars from 23 military engagements. Every ship that had tried to destroy it had failed. Every crew that had chased it had disappeared. And now it had one purpose: find Lyra Voss. Inside, Kale stood before a flickering map. Systems pulsed in red. Black zones stretched across the stars. He wasn't following official records. He was tracing something older. Older than council grids. Older than most civilizations. He was following instinct. In his hand, a small device blinked once every few seconds. A pulse beacon. It was tuned to Lyra's subdermal ID chip. Standard for colonists. Invisible to most scanners. But Kale wasn't most. Each blink confirmed one thing. She was alive. Not safe. Not untouched. But alive. He turned to the onboard AI, a voice older than the ship itself. "Start triangulation," he ordered. The voice responded, soft and emotionless. "Signal is weak. Likely inside a quantum-shielded vessel. Moving. Unpredictable trajectory." Kale didn't blink. "Then we predict harder." Meanwhile, far from the edge of map space, Lyra Voss stirred. She was lying on a smooth, metallic surface. No restraints. No sound. Only a low vibration under the floor. She sat up slowly. The room was clean. Cold. A pale blue light hummed from the walls. Her breath caught. There were no windows. No doors. Only a presence. From the far side of the chamber, something moved. Tall. Thin. Gray-green skin that shimmered slightly as it walked. No visible eyes. No mouth. Yet Lyra heard a voice. Not in her ears. In her mind. "You are not prey." She stood slowly, heart racing. "Then why am I here?" "To observe. To understand." She swallowed. Her training kicked in. Calm voice. Short words. "Who are you?" The voice answered with a name she didn't recognize. Then, more clearly, "We are the Nzal." The name meant nothing. No records in her memory. No first contact files. But it should have. The Nzal were not new. They were forgotten. Erased. They had lived in silence for centuries, watching species rise and fall, cataloging extinction like historians. And now they had taken her. Back aboard the night glass, Kale leaned over a comms console, speaking to an old contact. A pirate queen who once tried to kill him. Now she owed him a debt. "I need jump gate data from the outer rim," he said. She hesitated. "Voss, that's Nzal territory. You go there, you won't come back." He stared at her through the screen. "Then I'll go twice." She sent the coordinates. He was moving faster now. Every system pinged with danger alerts. Council beacons warned him to turn back. Patrol ships hailed him. Kale ignored them all. His message was already out. Spread across rogue networks. Smuggler channels. Lost freighter relays. To the ones who took his daughter, it said, "You still have time. You still have a choice. But if you wait too long, there will be no one left to beg for mercy." Lyra Voss had studied over 200 known languages, but nothing prepared her for silence this complete. The Nzal didn't speak with mouths. They didn't blink. They didn't breathe in the way humans did. And yet, their presence filled the room like pressure on her chest. They had shown her no violence, no pain, no commands, only questions, projected into her thoughts, delivered without tone, clean, cold. "What makes your species endure?" Lyra responded with logic. "Adaptation, innovation, willpower." The answer wasn't accepted or rejected. It was simply recorded. The next day, or what she guessed was a day, they asked again, "What makes your species endure?" She gave a different answer. "Memory. We remember what was lost. We learn from it." Again, no reply. Just the feeling of being watched. They didn't hurt her, but she knew what they were doing. She was being studied, not as a prisoner, not as a diplomat, as a specimen. Back on the night glass, Kale Voss watched as the stars shifted outside the window. They were deep into unmapped space now. The AI's tracking algorithm was refining Lyra's signal, still faint, but not gone. The beacon had moved twice, first in a straight line, then erratically, as if through an artificial wormhole. That's when Kale realized the truth. The Nzal weren't just hiding. They had technology advanced enough to fold space, without trace. No warp trails, no gravity echoes. Impossible, but happening. He called up old war files. Conflicts on outer planets. Vanished colonies. all logged as pirate raids or gravitational disasters. Now, Kale saw the pattern. Every single one had the same thing in common: the complete disappearance of local population. No bodies. No resistance. Just gone. For decades, the galaxy thought it was chaos. But it was design. The Nzal had been watching for years. Selecting targets. Extracting samples. Kale leaned back in his chair. A quiet fury tightened in his chest. They weren't interested in conquest. They were documenting extinction. And humanity had just become their next subject. Inside the Nzal vessel, Lyra began to piece things together. She had no datapads, no tools. But she had memory, words, symbols. The walls of her room had tiny pulses, not lights, but indicators. They pulsed in different sequences depending on when the Nzal visited. She began to record the patterns in her head, not just to understand, but to disrupt. She was her father's daughter. She knew she couldn't overpower them, but she could outthink them. Late one cycle, she closed her eyes and asked a question of her own. If I am a witness, what am I meant to see? The answer came slower than usual. You will observe the last breath of your species and preserve it in memory. Lyra's blood ran cold. The Nzal weren't just curious. They were archivists. They watched civilizations at the edge of collapse. They documented their final moments. Then they vanished, taking samples and data with them. They had done it to others. Now it was humanity's turn. Lyra stood alone in her room, heart racing, eyes wide. She wasn't just a hostage. She was the first page in a book they planned to write about human extinction. And far away, across dead stars and folded light, Kale Voss whispered to himself, "Not this time." The station orbited a dead moon in the Talon Rift. No name, no transponder, just scars from old battles and flickering lights that never stopped blinking. It was a pirate den now. Smugglers, black market tech dealers, scavengers. The kind of people who knew things no one else dared to say out loud. Kale Voss walked through the airlock alone. He didn't wear insignia. He didn't need to. The silence that followed him said enough. Mercenaries moved out of his way. Conversations died as he passed. Everyone here had heard the stories. Some didn't believe them. Others had fought beside him. And a few had watched what happened when Kale Voss was angry. He found the contact near the back of a rusted bar, a former intelligence broker turned salvager. Name, Hento Vel. Once clever, now drunk and trying to forget too much. Kale sat down across from him. "You've seen their ships," Kale said. Hento didn't answer. Kale placed a small device on the table. It played a static warped image. A Nzal vessel folding space like it was paper. Hento's hands trembled. "I didn't tell anyone," he whispered. "Not the council. Not the smugglers. They'd never believe it anyway." Kale leaned forward. "I believe it. And I'm not here for belief. I'm here for their coordinates." Hento hesitated. "They don't stay still. They don't repeat jumps. It's like they're dancing through dimensions. No one can track that." Kale's voice dropped lower. "I don't need to track them. I just need to get close." After a long silence, Hento slid a chip across the table. "One of their scouts pulled a sample from a mining colony 3 months ago. The ship disappeared right after, but we traced its exit signature to a dark corridor beyond the Crydon belt." Kale stood. "Then that's where I start." Hento grabbed his wrist. "You don't understand. This isn't war. They're not soldiers. They don't defend. They don't fight. They erase." Kale's eyes didn't blink. "So do I." He returned to the night glass and uploaded the data. The AI calculated a jump point, unstable, unregistered, and surrounded by gravitational anomalies. The kind of place no sane pilot would enter. But Kale Voss wasn't known for sanity. The ship surged forward. Meanwhile, inside the Nzal vessel, Lyra had started speaking to herself. Out loud. Not to stay sane, she had passed that point already, but to measure time. Sound was the only thing she controlled. She noticed the guards rotated every 11 hours, and the pulsing lights dimmed every 4. There was a system, a rhythm. She used it. In her mind, she built a model of the ship, rooms, corridors, guard shifts. She listened for footsteps, counted their frequency. She tracked energy surges in the walls. And she waited. The Nzal still asked questions. They still spoke into her mind. What is the cost of survival? She answered with one word. Everything. Then she smiled for the first time in days. Because that's the answer her father would give. And she knew he was coming. The Nzal didn't understand rage. But they were about to meet it. Lyra no longer feared the silence. She studied it. The Nzal relied on stillness, on absence. They believed that quiet was control. But Lyra had been raised by a man who once fought in a trench for 7 days without speaking a word. She knew how to think in silence, how to plan. They kept giving her questions. She kept giving them lies. What drives your kind to resist inevitable decline? Hope. What is your species' greatest weakness? Fear. They recorded it all. But she watched the watchers. She learned the sound their steps made when distracted. She memorized the pattern of their attention. And she noticed something else. One of them, younger, smaller, paused longer than the others outside her chamber. Not curious, hesitant. Lyra pressed her hand to the door during one such moment. I know you can hear me, she said softly. Silence. You think you're safe because you're observing. But you're not. You've studied our extinction. But you've never seen what happens when you try to force it. Still no response. I'm not just data. I'm his daughter. And he's coming. The next day, the same Nzal entered her chamber alone. This had never happened before. It didn't speak. But it didn't stop her from speaking either. You're not like the others, she said. Still nothing. I don't want to escape. I want to understand why you're afraid of us. The creature finally answered, just 3 words. Not afraid. Curious. Then help me. Show me where I am. The Nzal placed its hand on the wall. The room shimmered, revealing a map, an incomplete star chart drawn in curved, elegant lines. Only one point pulsed. Lyra committed it to memory. A moment later, the map vanished. The Nzal left without another word. But Lyra now had a location, and far away. Kale Voss already knew it. The night glass had pushed through the Crydon belt. Radiation storms, phantom gravity wells, spatial echoes that could tear lesser ships apart. But Kale had flown through worse. The AI had isolated a single repeating energy pattern, almost microscopic, but just enough. A breadcrumb left by an ancient propulsion system. Nzal Tech. He followed it. The coordinates led to a drifting rock, half buried in cosmic dust. At first glance, there was nothing. No station. No signal. Then the ship shuddered. Something massive uncloaked before him. It wasn't a vessel. It was a city. A mobile Nzal archive ship. The size of a moon. Black, smooth, and silent. No lights. No weapons visible. But Kale knew better. He powered down all external signals. Let the ship drift. No pulse. No threat. Just a shadow in space. Then he prepped the boarding pod. It wasn't suicide. It was war. The AI offered one final warning. Hostile engagement likelihood, 99.6%. Kale smiled. I'll take those odds. Inside the Nzal archive, alerts flickered, not alarms, but subtle shifts in monitoring nodes. Something had entered the exclusion perimeter. Something small, silent. human. Lyra felt it before anyone said a word. Not in the air, not in the metal, but in her blood. A rhythm, a certainty. He was here. Her father had arrived. And now, the war they thought belonged to history was about to begin again. The boarding pod slipped through the void, silent and unseen. Kale Voss gripped the controls with steady hands. The inside of the pod was cramped cold, but familiar. This was no ordinary mission. It was a hunt. Outside, the massive Nzal archive loomed. It was a dark monolith against the stars, its surface smooth and unyielding. No visible entry points. No weak spots. Kale's AI whispered possibilities. Hull density irregularities detected. Possible airlock access at grid 79. He maneuvered toward it. The pod's magnetic clamps latched silently. Kale slipped out, armor gleaming dimly under the faint blue glow of the ship. His boots touched the cold metal floor, echoing softly. Inside, the corridors stretched endlessly, sterile and humming with alien energy. No lights hung overhead, just subtle pulses from the walls that shifted as he moved. He moved like a shadow. The Nzal had no concept of stealth. Their confidence was in technology, not subterfuge. That was his advantage. Kale's HUD flickered. Sensors detected faint life signs, too few for a ship this size. But he wasn't here to fight armies. He was here for one. He advanced. Meanwhile, Lyra paced in her cell. She had memorized the layout, the guards' routines. Tonight was different. She felt it. The air grew heavier. The subtle vibrations shifted. Someone was in the ship. Her heart quickened. She sat silently, waiting. Kale reached the central chamber, a vast room filled with translucent tanks, each holding samples of extinct species, preserved in suspended animation. Fossilized memories of galaxies lost to time. And at the far end, Lyra. She was contained in a sleek pod, no visible restraints, but suspended in a force field. Kale activated his comms in low whisper. "Lyra, I'm here." Her eyes widened. She pressed her hand against the glass. "I'm coming for you." Before he could reach her, alarms flared. Red light pulsed, washing over the chamber. The Nzala's silent watch ended. Automated drones emerged, sleek and cold, weapons humming softly. Kale grinned. I wondered when the party would start. The corridor filled with drones. Kale fired precise shots, each disabling but silent. His armor absorbed blows that would have shredded any ordinary man. He sprinted, dodged, and pushed forward. Lyra's pod began to flicker, destabilizing. "Hold on," Kale shouted. Her lips moved silently, mouthing a prayer she had heard from her father long ago. Kale reached her side. With a sharp tool, he hacked the control panel. The field collapsed. She stepped out, breathing deep. But escape was far from assured. The ship shook violently. The Nzal were not simply defending. They were reacting. Kale grabbed her hand. Time to move. They raced through the twisting corridors, alarms blaring, drones swarming behind. Lyra saw something no one else did. A shadow moving faster than drones could react. A small Nzal figure blocking their path. But the figure hesitated. Kale and Lyra pressed on. Outside, the boarding pod awaited. Lyra looked at her father, fierce determination in her eyes. "You kept your promise." Kale nodded. "As long as I breathe, no one takes my family." The pod launched just as the ship began to collapse around them. They escaped into the cold emptiness of space. But the war was far from over. The stars outside the pod blurred into streaks as Kale pushed the engines beyond their limits. Behind them, the colossal Nzal archive ship erupted in a cascade of fire and shattered metal. Lyra's breath came steady, but her eyes betrayed the storm inside. "They'll come after us," she said quietly. Kale's gaze never left the navigation console. They always do. The pod shuddered violently, warning lights flashing. A missile locked onto their position, closing in fast. Evasive maneuvers, Kale growled. The pod spun sharply, dodging the first salvo. More missiles followed in rapid succession. Lyra gripped the side rail. They won't stop. They never do. But neither do we. Kale's fingers flew over the controls, weaving through asteroid debris fields with a precision born from decades of combat. Every move was a gamble, every second a fight for survival. Behind them, the Nzal vessels sliced through space, relentless and silent hunters. Their ships emitted no typical engine glow, only subtle warps in the fabric of space-time, making them nearly invisible until dangerously close. We can't outrun them forever, Lyra said, voice tight. No, but we don't have to. Kale tapped into the pod's encrypted comms channel. Static, then a familiar voice answered. A grizzled pilot from a hidden resistance base. Voss, we've been tracking you. We've got ships ready to assist. Good. Prepare for jump coordinates, Kale replied. Lyra turned to her father. You fought wars I only heard about. How did you keep going? Kale's eyes darkened. Because there was always something worth fighting for. He looked at her. You. She swallowed the lump in her throat. Suddenly, the pod sensors flickered. Anomalies everywhere. The Nzal had activated spatial mines. Kale cursed under his breath. Hold on. Explosions rocked the pod. Shrapnel tore through the hull. Alarm screamed. Lyra's hand found Kale's. I'm not going anywhere without you. He nodded, renewed determination surging through him. With expert precision, Kale navigated through the deadly minefield. Every explosion chipped away at their ship, but they pushed forward. Then, a sudden jolt. The pod's power flickered. Systems failed. We're losing engines. Kale's mind raced. There was one last option. A risky, untested jump through a gravitational anomaly. Lyra looked at him, eyes wide. Can we make it? He gave a grim smile. We have to. Kale recalibrated the pod's jump drives. Energy surged, engines flared, and with a final pulse, the pod vanished into the unknown. The silence that followed was deafening. When the stars reappeared, they were somewhere else, far from Nzal reach. Lyra exhaled deeply, her voice trembling. We're alive. Kale squeezed her hand. And now the real fight begins. They had escaped, but the Nzal would not forget. The galaxy was a battlefield, and the daughter of its most feared warrior was no longer a victim. She was a beacon, a spark of hope in the vast darkness. Kale set a course for the resistance base. They would rebuild. They would strike back. Because some wars are fought not just for survival, but for the right to exist. And the Voss name was far from finished. The resistance base was a hive of activity, old warships docked, engineers running repairs, soldiers preparing for battle. But none of it mattered to Kale Voss except the one figure standing tall amidst the chaos, Lyra. She had changed, not just in body, but in spirit. The quiet determination in her eyes was the same fire her father had carried for decades. Kale approached her, voice low but firm. This is no longer just about survival. Lyra nodded, scanning the holomap before her. The Nzal archive ship's destruction had sent ripples through the galaxy. Their silence had been broken. They fear us now, she said. But we need more than fear. Kale's lips curled into a rare smile. Then we give them a reason to respect us. Together, they planned. The Nzal were more than observers. They were archivists of death. They believed civilizations could be reduced to data points, erased without consequence. But humanity was different. Lyra traced a finger over the star systems where the Nzal had taken samples. Worlds lost to silence. Histories wiped clean. "We have to warn the others," she said. "Form alliances. We can't fight alone." Kale tapped a command. "We'll send a message. A warning and a call to arms." As the fleet assembled, Lyra trained relentlessly. Her mind sharpened by captivity. Her body honed by years of survival instincts inherited from her father. The day came when the Resistance fleet rose from hiding, sleek ships gliding through the void with purpose and power. Kale stood on the bridge of the flagship, eyes on the starfield ahead. "This is more than revenge. This is the fight for our future." Lyra joined him, placing a steady hand on his shoulder. "Let them come. We're ready." The Nzal fleet appeared without warning, vast and silent. Their ships moved like ghosts, aiming to reclaim what they saw as lost property. But the Resistance was waiting. The battle was brutal. Pulses of energy lit the darkness as human ships dodged and fired with precision. The Nzal used their space-folding technology to flank and confuse. Yet, humanity's resilience was unmatched. Kale led strike teams that hit the core of the enemy fleet. Lyra coordinated defense grids, using knowledge gained during her captivity to anticipate the Nzal's moves. Amidst the chaos, a final push, the Resistance broke through the Nzal command vessel's shields. Kale and Lyra boarded together, facing the alien leaders who had once taken her captive. "Your archives won't erase us," Kale said, voice echoing through the vast chamber. Lyra stepped forward. "We are not data points. We are living history." The Nzal hesitated, an unfamiliar emotion flickering across their features. Then, in a moment that would be remembered, they offered a ceasefire. Not out of fear, but respect. The galaxy would never forget the Voss name, a legacy forged in fire, blood, and unyielding will. Lyra looked to her father. "We survived." Kale smiled, the weight of countless battles behind him. "We thrived." And in that vast cosmic expanse, humanity's story continued, no longer as a footnote in an alien archive, but as a shining chapter of defiance and hope.